Right, we're going to reconvene our meeting and continue walking through H687 draft 4.1.
All right, so on page 50 into page 51, so this is the language that we previously have reviewed on the planned growth area designation, which is tier 1A. And so there are a couple of small changes here to reflect that tier 1B was given its own statute in the prior section. So like on line 13, it just has been changed so that it's for the area as opposed to the areas or something equivalent to that. Strikes the reference on line 16 to tier 1B. And then there's new language on page 51 in the requirements for what a municipality has to demonstrate to get the tier 1A designation. So it's adding language that's part of subsection C. So the municipality has to have flood hazard and river corridor bylaws applicable to the entire municipality that are consistent with the standards established in 755B and 1428B of this title, or the proposed planned growth area excludes the flood hazard areas and river corridor. So that's slightly simpler language, but similar to what's on the prior sections. On page 52.
We know why 24 VSA on line 17 of 51 is highlighted.
Yeah, so, and that's similar to what's on the next page. I'm gonna have
It's
folded. I have to line up all the cross references when you finish this bill. And so depending on what you decide, that section might be repealed. So that's in the existing chapter 76A. But the language for smart growth principles is added to the new chapter 159. So if you go with that structure, I'll need to fix that cross-reference, and the same for on the next. There's actually at least one more on this page too, and then on the next page, the cross-references will need to be updated. So that was for me to sort of keep track of too, but also the other thing I could do is try rewriting. Well, I need to think through how you're going to do the designated area handoff sort of. Yeah.
That makes sense.
And then, so on page 52, I'm not sure the smart growth principles are in chapter 117. I think they're actually in chapter 76A. So I was gonna check that cross-reference. And then again, 2792 D would be repealed, so I'd have to check that cross-reference. But then there's new language on page 52 regarding the wildlife bylaws. And so these are again the requirements for what a town has to have the tier 1A designation. And so this is adding on line 11 wildlife habitat planning bylaws for the planned growth area that protect significant natural communities, rare, threatened, and endangered species, and river corridors, or exclude these areas from the proposed planned growth area. And so this is adding a little more, I think, specificity to what would be included in the wildlife bylaws.
Does have any questions? Representative Baumgart.
In the previous draft, there was language to the effect that Fish and Wildlife would
Yes.
develop the model bylaws, or I forgot how that worked, but would that, I guess the question is, would that still be helpful to communities? Because otherwise, how do we really, who's going to determine whether they've got this? And I guess the board would.
Yeah.
But so actually, I withdraw it. I think that clear. That answered my own question.
At least good.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, yeah, Representative Clifford.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So maybe this goes along with what you were just said, but who designates the threatened and endangered species? Who would designate?
The Department of Fish and Wildlife has a process for listing species on that list.
Okay,
That's actually the process we heard a lot about yesterday.
okay, so they would have to, someone wanted to do this, the planned growth area, okay, so they would be called in by the, like, the planning commissions, or what triggers that?
So they would have to have bylaws in the area that protect species. So if any of them occurred there, they'd have to be addressed in the bylaws what would happen. And so what would happen is that the state has jurisdiction over that and has permit authority already. But I think the intent of this section is to sort of backfill the Act 250 criteria that requires projects to make sure they're not negatively impacting these species either.
Okay, for now, I guess.
Are you good?
Yeah, for now.
And so then, also on page 52, the requirement I, I'll read you this. So let me just read through this and then I'll discuss. The town needs to have permitted water and wastewater systems with the capacity to support additional development within the planned growth area. The municipality shall have adopted consistent policies by municipal plan and ordinance on the allocation, connection, and extension of water and wastewater lines that include a defined and mapped service area to support the planned growth area. So the planners requested having these mapped, and I think this has come up actually in past years that not all of the towns have mapped where their lines are, and that could be very helpful. So that's being added here. I did want to just mention, in addition, on the next page, so in the prior drafts, what you had for Tier 1B has been struck out, and it included that language in I, as was sort of brought up by Representative Logan, that it was left out, and then also adequate municipal staff was also included in your prior draft. So back to what you were talking about earlier, and I don't think you had fully made decisions on if that was the complete list, but
Here.
on page 53, on number 2, the yellow highlighted.
No, it's not in service.
Right, so I just wanted to propose, so there's some things happening here. So the NRB report had a sort of outline of what Tier 1B would include. But then you have been working on your planned growth area designation, and so we're working on the list of criteria for Tier 1B. And so I do think the NRB report had mentioned the water, sewer, soils discussion that you just had. But I think, and you were asking what else is missing. So I think the only thing that you had previously discussed for Tier 1B was the municipal staff component. So if you're looking at page 53, the draft previously had the municipality had to demonstrate A, E, I, J, and K. So A is the plan, the approved town plan. E is the permanent zoning and subdivision bylaws. I was that language I just read you about, permitted water and sewer with the mapped lines. J is adequate municipal staff to support their zoning administration. And then K is approval of the regional plan. So that's what you had been contemplating. I wasn't sure if you had, made that your definitive list, but because this draft is reflecting the proposal from the planners and others, I left this in here, but struck to show you that this is what you had previously.
think those are basic things that we want to have on required. I'm curious if the planners have, see, I don't know how directly involved you've been in this, Tom, but if you know the thinking behind this, that would be helpful.
Behind J or what?
Behind striking the requirements for 1B.
They're moved to that section we were just talking about.
They were moved.
Right. So they were moved to that section, but as you just discussed, what wasn't carried over was the water discussion
And the staffing.
and staff.
I think they're both necessary. Adequate staffing doesn't mean they have to have a planner. It means they need to have someone who can follow through on permits. Zoning administrator or lots of small towns have that.
The adequate staffing. Of the adequate staffing can determine.
So I think that is one, so I think that might be one thing at play here is that the prior section is proposing that the regional plan actually be making the proposal for 1B. So there might be a question of whether or not the Regional Planning Commission has access to that information.
They better know their town well. They know their town
Okay.
well enough to know if they, what kind of planning and zoning staffing support they have. Oh, yeah. Representative Logan.
Thank you. So for section, the new 10 VSA section 6034 here with the designation of tier 1B, could we not just use similar language as we're using in section 6033 and refer to section 6033 A, E, I, J, and K? In section 6034, instead of referring to 24 VSA 4348 AA 12C. Like, could we do that instead?
Yeah, I can
Good
draft it however, this is the proposal.
Good idea.
Yeah.
It seems like error if it's internal, it's an internal reference to the prior section.
I also could just list the things out.
I think listing the things out, make
Yeah.
it way more accessible.
The same,
Average reader,
the same things that are here, right?
just list them out, please. That's a great suggestion. And Representative Baumgart.
If you, the only thing I was careful about, if you take I verbatim and move it to 1B, then it's require both sewer and water, so we have to make sure.
That's the question, is just, you need to decide on what it is you want the elements to be, and then I can just draft it.
Adequate staffing should go back. I think water or sewer should go.
And actually, that should be mapped too, right? You would think for 1B.
It would
So
be.
you would use the same language except just say water or sewer. That makes sense. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it makes sense to have a map. That's pretty easy, isn't it? Yeah, so I'm saying yes.
Should be, in modern era, it should be,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then we're calling tier 1B a base growth area now? Instead of. Anyway. Wondering, is it, I here? And map service area to
What page are
support,
you on?
page 49, line 9. I'm just wondering if we're gonna move the language from page 52, letter I. Or what the phrase in the last line would be to support the,
Oh, I see. Base growth area.
base growth area.
We can keep trying that on. How does that sound?
Yeah, sorry, that was again, reference in the planner's proposal, so.
I don't think that word based in there.
Well, I think, yeah. They're just, I think referencing the idea that it could be a step towards a planned growth area.
Right.
It's to distinguish it from a planned growth area, and I don't think there's any harm in distinguishing it, so let's stick with it.
Okay.
Representative Logan.
Okay, follow-up question. So now that we're here, what is this list of requirements for a tier 1B designation Is this different in any way from the NRB report? Is this,
So as I just said, I think the only thing that's they didn't call out specifically was adequate staff.
okay,
I think that's the only distinction. But that, yeah. I thought I had the report, but I don't think I do.
So maybe they're gone. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I think. They've been in the room when we've gone through the list a number of times. So I'm, trusted that if they objected, they would bring it up. Let's keep going.
Okay. So, um. So on page 53, still in the requirements for tier 1A. We had this conversation sort of briefly last week, but line 11 to 12. It came up in the section we were just discussing also how you want there to be an interaction between the designations with tier A, 1A and B. Like, so this is referencing in compliance with underlying designation for the designated areas. So I don't know, didn't sound like you wanted that to be a requirement, but just flagging it.
If any,
And the designation program is changing too, so this is a little bit different now, potentially anyway.
this number 3 is saying if they're out of compliance with the underlying ACCD designation.
I think so, yeah.
Chris Cochran, do you want to speak to this?
Yeah, Chris Cochran, I don't think that makes a whole lot of sense because the mapping process is going to, they're going to follow a definition.
Where did this come from?
We've had a lot of drafts, I can't remember.
If it does refer to the designation program, we should just eliminate it.
That's what it is for the underlying designation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we need that to be linked there. We can take that out. Does anyone object to taking it out? Not seeing any.
So then, next, so process for issuing determinations on the planned growth area designation. A pre-application meeting shall be held with the board staff, municipal staff, and the staff of the relevant RPC. So that's having all 3 of these groups come together. Onto page 54. There is a proposal to strike having the RPC establish a procedure for draft applications of the tier 1A application.
Kind of a minor, I hate to do this, but going back to the bottom of 53. Say the meeting shall be held in the municipality unless another. Is there a reason this couldn't be done over Zoom? Just be.
That's a good point.
If it's preliminary, like, did you think about this? Did you think about?
Chris Cochran.
This just picks up old language from the NDA program, so I don't see any issue in modernizing it.
Couldn't that be another location? And I guess I do think that the main meeting, like, let's say in this current era, should be in the municipality, but there's no reason that someone couldn't zoom into it.
This is the main, this is the pre-app meeting.
It's a pre-app meeting. Is it a public meeting?
No, I don't think so.
Looks like it's a staff meeting.
Maybe we could just say at the end, or electronically. Parties agree.
Yeah, you could strike the whole sentence, or you could say, you know, it's held in the municipality unless otherwise agreed. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, I think unless another location.
Yeah.
Covers Zoom to me.
But does it? Certification is physical.
Okay, so what would you like to propose?
Yeah, just
Just
or
solution would be
electronically,
great.
or electronically.
Yeah.
That's all.
How are we referring to those meetings these days? You know, electronically seems odd, but
I think electronically works. I mean, I don't,
there's a lot of rules lately around.
yes.
So we're using words for it. I'm just not coming to me. So, all right, duly noted, you can change that.
Also. On page 54, there's also, line 17, proposal to strike, 30 days advance notice. To the municipality, which probably does make sense because the municipality is the one making the application, so they know.
Smith.
Thank you. I've seen notices go in papers like this. Says 30 days out. People forget all about it when it's time and they wish that they were able to attend the meeting, but they forgot about it. Is this possible to have a 30-day notice and a 15-day notice for meetings?
Anything is,
Because I don't know how many people come into a select board meeting and say, I forgot all about that because you posted it a long time ago.
I think that's a good idea. I agree with you.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
30 days and 15 days.
Yeah.
So on page 55, down on line 14, so no defect in the form or substance of any requirements of this subsection C, which is this these notice provisions, shall invalidate the action of the board where reasonable efforts have been made to provide adequate posting and notice. However, the action shall be invalid when the defective posting or notice was materially misleading in content. If an action is ruled to be invalid by the Superior Court or by the board itself, the municipality shall issue new posting and notice, and the board shall hold a new hearing and take new action. So, one, it's getting rid of the RPC from also issuing the notice, because this is about the municipality's application. But I did want to flag that we haven't spent much time talking about appeals or what an appeal means here. So this isn't specifically about appeals. This would be if somebody challenged in court that under this statute, the municipality hadn't followed the required procedure for notice. So it would go to the Superior Court, which could be part of an appeal, or it could be part of a separate action, I guess. But you haven't really talked too much, I think, about what the appeal process is for these designated areas. So I did want to flag that.
Right. Thank you for that note. I kind of want to also go back just to page 54, line 17. I kind of think the Regional Planning Commission should also have to post that this is happening. I don't know that it needs to be 35 days in advance, but since
Okay.
they're like doing this with our towns, right?
Mhm.
So,
Well,
and their page may be visited by different people. Is that a burden, Tom Kennedy? Like, does that make sense to you? Like, it just seems like it's the process of regional planning facilitating. Why wouldn't they post it?
Sometimes it's coordination issues with the municipality. And so we could do things like put it on our own website and advertise it that way, but I think we also want the municipality to take ownership of this process and not necessarily have it be the regional planning commission process. Because it is it's the municipality that's doing it.
Yeah, and I totally agree. It should be motivated by the municipality, but I'm just thinking about where people get information and who's got a webpage that's.
I mean, we certainly can put it on our webpage. As far as posting in a newspaper or whatever, we'll probably use the same newspapers, unless it's a very large region, but generally with the lack of newspapers or so on, we generally share similar papers.
Yeah, this one doesn't have the papers in it. It just says on its website.
But we can certainly do that.
On its website.
Little I two does say newspaper of general circulation.
Right,
Bottom.
right. When that's the town's requirement, and that I think we should keep. But Tom was concerned we were asking them both to put it in the newspaper, and I'm not. I'm just saying it's pretty easy to post something like that on a website, and people in the region might be interested if a town is applying for this, as well as people in that town. That's my only point. I think it's a big deal. And then I think that, Ellen, I think we're for that place to talk about the appeals, unless you know off the top of your head where that is. To your point at the bottom of page 55.
So I think at the bottom of page 56. So this is tier 1A. An interested person may appeal an act or decision of the board under this section to the Supreme Court within 30 days following the act or decision. And then the next page lists who those interested people are. So this does track with how you're doing the Act 250 appeals somewhat, which is an Act 250 appeal that's heard by the board. If there's an appeal from that, that goes to the Supreme Court. This is a little bit different. And so this is if the municipality is getting designated. The appeal, you do have an appeal route if the board makes a decision on that designation that can then be appealed to the Supreme Court. So appeals of designations currently don't happen. So this is a change. And then it does list on page 57 the people who are interested persons.
Seems pretty straightforward to me. Is there anything of concern for members on this process?
Okay.
Representative Logan.
Thank you. Why 20 persons by petition? I just reread H719 the other day. You didn't work on H7.
Adrian.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, you did.
Adrian.
On 57D.
Oh, yeah, any 20 people.
And
Oh,
that had a much higher threshold for
Yes. 10% of the population.
not directly like a person owning title to or occupying property within or abutting the designated area makes perfect sense. But then it was, 10%?
Population.
Population in the area from 719 would be required to sign on petition.
Yes. And Senate Economic Development modified that to 3%.
3%?
Yes. because we talked about all the various populations of the towns in the state, which range from 64 to 45,000.
So you had a very significant conversation over in Senate Economic Development about appeals processes?
Yes, we did.
Several.
Several. So I know that this has been something that people have been talking a lot about, making it harder for a group of people who aren't directly impacted by the decision to have a petition that would justify them being able to appeal.
Are you
Suggesting
offering
that we maybe use the if economic development, Senate Economic Development came up with that after a lot of testimony, maybe we can align the
So,
two appeal.
but this is not like a particular development appeal. This is a designation appeal for a town.
Right, but you could imagine it becoming somewhat
This person, a person
Contentious.
owning title to or occupying property within or abutting the designated area.
yeah. So you could imagine people having very strong opinions about the designations in their town, especially if parts of the town aren't included in the 1A, the planned growth area, or are, and they think that they shouldn't be.
Mhm.
Seems like we would want a large number of people from the community to agree that it needs to be appealed, not 20, including adjoining communities.
So the other dimension that you want to consider with this issue is whether or not this group of people need to have participated in the hearing, that is the last sentence here, is that all of them need to have participated in the hearing. In Title 24, participated means having provided written or oral comments at the public hearing. And so Burlington has 45,000 people in it. If it was 10%, that would mean that 4,500 people would have needed to participate in the public hearing. So economic development did add that not all of the percentage population had to participate in the hearing because physically that might not be possible. So if you're going to go to a percentage-based population, you need to consider that. But in the past, this participation requirement has been seen as a necessary requirement so that people raise their issues as soon as possible. So if you go to a population-based, you have to consider whether or not there's physically enough room in a space to hold 4,500 people. Or if there's multiple meetings held, or if there is a Zoom requirement that would even allow them. So there would have to be a structure in place for 4,500 people potentially to have weighed in at the public hearing in some way. Or you could not have that requirement. That is sort of why they landed at 3%, rounded up to the nearest whole person.
Well, and this says the designated representative must have participated in the public hearing.
Right, so
Gets rid of that.
no, but I'm also yeah, right. But so that's the question. If you're talking about the Senate economic development language, that's your sort of option. So if you want to leave it this way, you can. If you go to a population based, is that the same thing? Or do you want there to have been people weighing in at the public hearing in advance before they attempt to appeal?
Do you know where this language comes from in our bill? Originally?
Well, I suspect it's that I suspect I copied it from the existing municipal language. I don't remember if somebody
Or our,
used it. I think I probably. No, so I suspect I copied it from the existing statute, but I actually don't know.
Representative Bongard.
Stick out loud for a second. My sense has been, and maybe I'm wrong about this, that this would rarely happen.
Yeah.
That people not likely to appeal this, but maybe I'm wrong. So I hadn't paid too much attention to which way we should do this. Having 20 people who have participated is a fairly high bar.
Well, this is one person.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
But if we went one,
I say yes.
so the question would be whether we maybe do, so maybe we could frame the question. Would it make sense to frame the question as 3% or 20 people who have participated, in which makes more sense, and I don't know the answer to that.
20 is not enough for Burlington, which is why I understand,
Because the,
yeah.
and you're right, it's a lot then
It's-
for a smaller. It's a
the
lot.
thing-
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess the thing is though, a person owning title to or occupying property within or abutting the designated area, that's a lot of individuals who can do this.
Yeah.
So I think if there's some sort of groundswell that anyone who wants to appeal could find that person. Anyway. So I think the 20 persons is like kind of, can't imagine in this situation. They have to own or occupy within the municipality in which
Or
the
a
designated area
neighboring-
is located or an adjoining.
Joining
Oh,
municipality.
Yeah, so you're worried about crazy making or
Frivolous appeals.
yeah.
Of the, yeah, I'm worried about, I'm trying to imagine all the possible scenarios. Like next door neighbor municipalities having a problem with, some town becoming more developed that's next to their town, or, I would imagine, I still don't entirely understand, like, I can't entirely imagine what the planned growth area designation process is gonna look like vis-a-vis like tier 3 designation process, but you could because I would think that the tier 3 areas would be carved out of the 1A designation maps, right? That's the idea. I would imagine that becoming a contentious piece of the, like, people from an adjoining community maybe having a problem with how large the planned growth area is, or what it includes or doesn't include, or something like that. I don't know, just frivolous appeals holding up the entire process. Sounds like it would be,
So I think what I would ask is that we check what's existing statute and where this came from, and then we'll understand.
Well, so there isn't currently any kind of process for any existing designations.
No, I understand.
Right.
You said you might have taken it from existing municipal planning appeals, right?
Yes.
So can we just check that? See what's there?
Well,
That what this is from?
well, I don't know. So this language is not identical to what's in that statute. So I don't know how that language evolved. I don't know if that came out of conversations from earlier this fall or from one of the planning proposals. I don't remember, but it's similar to what's in statute for planning appeals, but not identical.
It's in statute.
So so last year you passed an amendment, so it's 10 people that are either own property, reside or are voters within the municipality. And they all have to have participated in the hearing.
So this is even more people than that.
and then we didn't have the equivalent of a single person owning title or occupying property, right? It had to be at least 10 people.
No, no. So there is existing provision in the municipal context for an abutter, but they have to have demonstrated a potential environmental impact to them. So yeah, for appeals of municipal planning decisions, it's a person owning property who alleges the bylaw or permit imposes on the property unreasonable or inappropriate restrictions. And then the next interested person is the municipality. or any municipality that adjoins that municipality. Next is a person owning or occupying property in the immediate neighborhood of the property, subject to the decision, who can demonstrate a physical or environmental impact on that person's interest under the criteria reviewed. And then any 10 persons, which any combination of voters, residents, or real property owners who by signed a petition, allege any relief requested, will not be in accord with the policies, purposes, or terms of the plan or bylaw. And then designate one person as a representative, and then they also need to have participated. There's also any department or administrative subdivision of the state owning property within the municipality.
Yeah.
So just to make sure what we're.
Wait, this
so
one?
Yeah.
In some ways, the decision that somebody might want to appeal would have been the map. Because the map is gonna say, this is the area. And so all anybody would be appealing at this point, if I have this right, is the removal of active, in a way, the removal of Act 250 jurisdiction.
I think, well, so there's also that's that list of criteria on the bylaws that the municipality has to demonstrate that they have.
So somebody could be saying, you don't really have, you haven't looked at that.
Yeah.
Even though the board had said that.
Yeah.
It's going to, an appeal then would be very technical, actually, because they're saying there's 7 things you have to do to 1A, and you haven't met one, but it would be odd if the board in the meantime had said, yes, you do. It's not like sometimes appeals are around like character of the area, nebulous things.
Right.
This is a checklist.
Yeah.
So it's.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would also just add that anytime you create a new statutory regime, you will have vagueness that would get borne out by litigation, right? So while I do think it would be much less subjective than character of the area, you will have a board reviewing for the first time bylaw sufficiency. So that might be an interesting process.
To move on, it's about 11 o'clock. We're gonna shift gears, actually. I'm gonna say we will be back with Ellen tomorrow afternoon and continuing our walkthrough. Representative Baumgart,
Could we come, would it be possible to come back after 4?
today,
Yeah.
if it's short,
Or, yeah.
if floor's short, I think we could do that. So I think there may be things on the floor, but it's a good suggestion.
They're currently forecasting a 2-hour.
What did
Air
you say,
traffic
Will?
control.
Yeah.
Did you just say?
They're saying, he said it's currently forecast to be a 2-hour.
I have a meeting in Newport at 6:30 that I need to be at, so if I leave here at 5, I'll be fine.
So, well, stay tuned. If the floor is short and Ellen is available, I will make an announcement that we would come back. It's a good suggestion. We are going to start looking for more opportunities to keep going on this. We may end up working a little bit of extra hours due to the time this is taking us. So
Get over
good. For now, let's take a 5-minute break and then we'll come back and talk some Whisper again.